Welcome to another episode of Galaxy Gardens. My name is Chrissy, and today we're going to talk about garden planting. Now, we've already talked about garden planting before, and that is as far as where you should put your garden. Today we're going to talk about what to put in your garden and when. Now, just full disclosure, all of this information is specific to Massachusetts, or if you have a climate similar to ours. We're in zone 6B, but 6B looks very different depending where you are. So I'll just show you what we've been doing. Just a heads up, this is not a visually dynamic video. It's going to be a lot of talking, but I really want to share with you how I do my garden planning every year and how I figure out what to plant where and what's going to do the best after one crop is done, and thinking of not only the different seasons within the same year, but how you want to do your crop rotation year to year. So let's get into it, let's check it out, and I think this is going to help you out a bit. Come on. Here's a seeding update. No onions or leeks yet. So far, just the broccoli has come up, and we're still waiting. So I was misting these, but you can also, in this type of tray, do a bottom watering. That's to keep them damp, but nothing just yet since last week and last video. It's been about 8 days. So probably the next week or two, we'll see some growth. Okay, so first things first, when you're thinking of what you're gonna grow and how you're gonna rotate your crops through the season, is to go grab your seed box, because if you're like me, you're probably going to forget what actual seeds you have and how many of each. So go ahead, do that, go get that, come back. Then we're going to figure out what we grew last year, what's going to follow that up first and foremost this year, and then if you want to get fancy, we're going to figure out each of the seasons you're growing in for this year. So most likely, we're going to end up making multiples of these. What we're looking at here is a 2-scale drawing of our main garden that I made at the end of our growing season. What I included there was what the main crops were in each of the beds and what makes sense for our main crops this year to be to follow those. I also included what our other 2 main growing areas are and potential for a different part of our yard that we didn't really use very much of last year. I also included a little bit around our deck. I wanted to do a gold raspberry, a red raspberry, then a black raspberry, and then our black raspberry died. So I thought, well, maybe this year we could build a cold frame. But no decisions on that yet. So that's what this paper is. Now this paper on the right is taking information from that template and making some adjustments for our different seasons we're going to do in the main garden. Now this is not taking into consideration if we build a cold frame, because that ends up being like a 4th season that you can harvest from, but not necessarily like grow stuff in. So that is a plan for another day. I'd have to figure out how to build the cold frame and all that. We're not going to talk about it here. So what's going on here? So in both of these, you could think of this side as being like where our garage is, and this side being where our property fence is. Same thing, garage, property fence, okay? So what we were looking at, if you're looking like that way from the garden, it's about west, all right? The spaces on the right that are colored in are where we've planted our garlic. And we planted it like that because I was talking to Greg, and he had a good idea to be like, hey, you planted your garlic here, and everything was in there last year. Why don't we split it up and it can be used as pest control? I was like, that's brilliant, and we're gonna do that. So What that means is everything else that's going to go in there is going to work around that. Now, if you know anything about crop rotation, you know that the reason for crop rotation is to help reduce the chances of disease, fungus spreading, any kind of viral issues, maybe like some bad bacteria you don't want staying in your soil. And through crop rotation, not only are you letting your soil rest from that specific environment that develops when that plant is growing there, it helps sometimes when you follow it up with another plant to like kill off anything you don't want. Okay. Typically with crop rotation, you want to give each area anywhere between like 1 and 4 years before you plant that same variety there. And this is way more difficult to manage in the home garden because more than likely you have limited space. It's not like you can grow in a whole field and rotate it out, leave like one field fallow for a year or two before you come back to it, right? But there's some things that you can do to get around that, right? So you can see here I have spring, summer, and fall. And these are just going to be main crops. Some timing and planting them is going to be up to the weather. It's going to be up to when stuff ripens, when it's ready for harvest, or maybe it's not doing so good and we're going to take it out. So a good example of that is here we planted garlic last year. Well, this year we're going to do potatoes, and our potatoes we're going to plant in March, okay? And they're going to grow all through the summer. Our potatoes that we grew last year, we harvested at the end of August, but I've harvested potatoes at the beginning of August. I've harvested potatoes in July before. We grow all mid-season potatoes. If you're growing early season potatoes, you're probably harvesting those in like June or July. If you're growing late season potatoes, you're probably harvesting those in like October. Depends on what you're growing. For us, we're probably going to harvest them in August, which means in the fall we can grow brassicas as a follow-up. And as far as the brassicas go, what we're going to do is while the potatoes are growing, probably in like the beginning or mid-July, we'll start our brassicas into some seed trays. So we can keep an eye on the potatoes, and by the time we take the potatoes out, we can just put those right in. And it's easier for brassicas to go from hot to cold than from cold to hot. So as our nights get cooler and cooler, they'll be fine. Probably get a harvest of brassicas in like October. Okay. Now some of the things you see that we're growing here, we have our main crops that are going in the summer, but not necessarily the spring. Now for us, spring temperatures, let's just say anything under 60 degrees, right? That's gonna be pretty much March to like mid or late May. So that's what I'm considering our springtime planting. Things like tomatoes and peppers, I don't want to put those in till the end of May or even June, depending on what our night temps are, right? So some of these you can see here, we have peppers and herbs that I'm going to be planting in the summer. And I'm considering summer like late May to like mid to late August, which is a few months. Or even, you know, let's just say June to September if you're having a good warm year. So for that about like 2.5 to 3 month time span where I can grow stuff and I can't put peppers in the ground, well, these beds are just not being used, right? So what I can do before peppers and herbs is just some lettuce. Lettuce can be a heavy feeder, but it's really not that bad. So what I'm probably going to do is grow the lettuce, and then when it's warm enough to put the peppers out, I'll just take this out. That's fine. If I need to do any amendments, like adding some fertilizer to the bed or maybe some more compost, I'll do that. The herbs may be able to go in a little bit early, but most herbs you want to grow them in warm weather. And the peppers are going to grow pretty much to October. I think most of our stuff grew to like almost Halloween last year. So that's just what's going to be in that bed for the rest of the year. And then by the time we take it out, that'll be the time when you're thinking of your winter harvest. You know, what are you having in a cold frame? If you're lucky enough to have a greenhouse, that's pretty cool. So there's a really good book. It's Elliot Coleman's 4-Season Harvest. There's so many charts in there about crop rotation, how to build different stuff for your property. So like if you want to build a greenhouse, if you want to build a cold frame. Oh, hi, Boo-Boo. That's a good book I'd recommend. Oh, she got my tripod. Come here, honey. That would be very helpful for this. In a pinch, you can go on Google and be like, oh my goodness, I planted potatoes. What can I plant after that? What can I plant with corn? What can I plant with pumpkins? There's so much information out there. Please use the internet as a tool. So thinking of our seasons, right? So let's say March to the end of May, you know, even if you want to push it, that's going to be our spring. Summer, you know, end of May, June till almost September. That'll be this portion. And then the fall, I want everything that is going to be grown in the fall in the ground at the latest by the beginning of September. And I want to start most of the seeds for stuff we're growing in the fall, unless it's like been growing in the summer, it's going to stay. So like the peppers and our tomatoes are going to just stay in our raised beds for basically both of those seasons. But stuff I want to harvest in the fall, you want to start planting in the summer. And if you don't have the room to put them in where you're growing, just start them in seed trays. You can keep those going in your garage if you have like a seed starting setup in your house. Or even if you want to, you could get them started in seed trays or pots and just keep them outside, and then they're already acclimated to the elements, and you're just moving them to an area with more soil, more nutrients when you want them to do that bulk growth. Okay, so we have our 3 main seasons here. So here in the spring, usually I plant potatoes around mid-March. I usually get them around mid-March. I order them from the same company every year. And I also have onion sets coming in, and we started our onions the other week. So all the onions we have and all the potatoes we have, they're going to be going in at the latest the end of March. So that's part of our spring planting. We're going to be doing potatoes in bed A, C, E, and G. And then in the in-between beds, right? So we have 2 of them that have garlic in them already. So let's say in bed F, we have garlic on this side and carrots on this side in the spring. And then when those carrots come out, I'm going to be planting okra because I don't need to plant okra till June. And okra takes a couple months to grow in, so we'll probably start like getting okra in August. Here in raised bed D, same thing, we're going to do garlic and carrots, but instead of growing okra again here, we're going to do some beans after those carrots. Carrots are not very heavy feeders. You don't want to give them that much fertilizer either. So it's thinking of what do you want to put in there, what do you want to grow after. Here in bed B, we're going to do Swiss chard and collards, and I'll probably be putting some kale in there too. And then, but keeping in mind for spacing that I want to grow okra in this whole bed in the summer. And greens are okay to interplant with okra. So I'll probably end up doing the greens like on the edges of this bed, maybe make a border, and we'll grow the okra in the middle, and that'll work just fine. Now moving from that to the summer, right? So I'll have the okra in there by the summertime. Potatoes obviously are going to grow throughout the summer, and I'm going to follow up with brassicas. If you saw our video from last week where I actually started some brassica seeds, those are not going into this garden at all. They're going to be grown in pots, and we're going to keep them in more of a shady location, just because, you know, if you know anything about spring, sometimes you get really, really hot and sunny days and cold nights. So if you keep them in a shady area, you're good. But our fall brassicas are going to get started in pots or seed trays in the summer. As soon as those potatoes come out, we're going to put them in. So this is how I kind of figure out what we're going to grow through the year. That's why I want to have my seed box with me, so I know how many of each type of seed we want. Because this year I really want as many plants as possible that we can keep in storage. So beans, I want to freeze and can as many beans as possible. Potatoes, we did do potato storage this year. I don't think I'm going to do it again next year because we like growing potatoes, but we never eat that much of them. I guess it's the same thing as with our chickens. We like having the chickens, but we don't eat that many eggs. So next year, what we really like to do is kind of pre-cook the potatoes and freeze them as like French fries or hash browns. So I think that's what we're going to do. And we give away a lot too. So one couple last things on this before we get off of these papers. And if you want to copy these, please be my guest. Go ahead. You're more than welcome to do this. I will not be scanning this into anywhere, but have at it. Knock yourself out. So there's going to be a couple other things that change here. So garlic, traditionally I harvest it around the 4th of July. That's usually when it's ready. Sometimes a little bit earlier. More times than not, it's like a little bit earlier or on the 4th of July weekend or whenever that is, first week of July. But usually never later. So when our garlic comes out, we can replace that with something else. In this case, in bed O, we have garlic going all down the middle. Our tomatoes are going to grow on each side there. When the garlic comes out, you know, we can put something else in there. We don't have to leave it blank. I mean, you could leave it blank if you wanted to. But what I'm going to want to do is put some carrots in the middle there. In row M, same kind of growth pattern there, same deal. Except that one I'm going to switch it up. I'm not going to do carrots in this one. We're going to do beets. The reason for that is once our cucumbers come out of here and our onions come out of here, the onions will probably be ready in like the middle of July or early August. I forget how many hours of sunlight we have by the summer solstice, but that's usually like late July. Wait a minute, that's not right. It's July or June. I'll look it up. But the onions will be coming out in the middle of the summer. And the cucumbers, usually they'll come in. Some cucumbers will go like the whole season, but other ones will like give you a bunch of cucumbers and then kind of peter off. So you can, you know, if they're not doing well, take them out, put more cucumbers in. But what we're going to do instead is just replace it and do a whole bed of carrots after those are done. Because I love carrots and we never have enough. And I don't like the carrots from the store. So that is just what's going in this main area. Now we have so many cucumber varieties and we have all this extra space around here, right? So we have 2 hardy kiwis on this side, and we have 2 pawpaws, and I have a 3rd one coming in, so we'll have Pawpaw Lane. So we have our kind of vining plants. Over here we have a thornless blackberry and 2 pink lemonade blueberries. Back here we have asparagus, 2 kinds of blackberries that go here, and then I'm still trying to foster a ground cherry patch. So like this whole area is going to be full. Here in the middle I'm going to be doing summer squashes, and maybe just like a couple of each kind. You can see over here I already have it allocated. Just if they each take like 2 feet up, then that means I could grow like 2 or 3 kinds. Pole beans I'm not going to be growing in here. I'm going to give them their own section. We had it on this side last year were some rattlesnake beans growing up a trellis, and they did great. So we have those we're going to grow again. I think I have one other pole bean. So we'll just do them over here, maybe make like 2 trellises. But we have more cucumbers, we have other stuff. What we can do is just make other areas for them to grow, or even on the corners here, we could have them going up the posts. There's a lot of stuff you can do. Then in the front, we have our corns. And in the back, we have another area for corn. So in our front beds, I tried growing rice and wheat, and then one with like a few kinds of corn. We did get corn, but we didn't get rice or wheat. We got like a couple heads of wheat. So what I'm going to do is use our sugar snap pea trellises that we grew on last year. Instead of putting them in here, we're going to grow them out front and do the peas. And then by the time the peas are done, it'll be time to plant the sweet corn. So I'll probably be planting all of this in June. In the back, where our melons and cucumbers just did so awful, we actually had some popcorn do really good back there. And we have a fence, so I'm going to do sugar snap peas up the fence again in the spring, and then follow it up with popcorn. And there's, I don't know, at least 50 yards between these two. So fingers crossed there won't be as much cross-pollination, but we're going to plant them at different times as well. We're going to put this in first, and then wait 2 to 3 weeks and we'll put this in. And that'll be fine. We also have garbanzo beans this year, which is going to be a bit of a treat. But they have about 100 days that they need to grow, so I just need them in one spot where they're going to grow until the pods turn brown and they're ready to harvest for storage. And then we're probably going to dry them and keep them in a bag in the pantry. You can also vac seal them or freeze them. There you have it. That's how I do succession planting in our yard, at least in our main garden. Now, some things I didn't include there that we're also growing this year is some more wheat. I picked up an upland rice, which is a rice with a shorter growing season than what we tried last year. Last year, I think it was over 120 days till maturity, and the one we have is around or under 100 days till maturity. I have some sorghum coming in, and we're also going to try growing tobacco. Those are going to go in some different areas, but not in our main garden. We'll find the space for them. The way that we like to grow is to get bulk quantities of different stuff rather than sowing smaller amounts, so we get like a continued fresh harvest every year. We'll eat stuff as it comes in, as it's fresh. But because our focus is on preservation, so we have food, you know, this time of year, it's the first week of February, I want to be able to go to my cabinet and get some stuff that we grew last year, because even if it is preserved, it's still going to taste better than anything we get from the store. So that's how we like to do it. If you're someone who really just wants to grow that stuff to eat it fresh through the season, and you're cool with going to the grocery store during the winter, by all means, dial it back a bit. Grow smaller amounts rather than bulk amounts at a time. Something I'm thinking of is the sweet corn, right? So we're just gonna do 2 big beds of sweet corn. Everything's going in at the same time, because while we'll eat some of it fresh, we're probably just gonna blanch and freeze it. But if you wanted to do that at home, what you could do is plant a new row once a week or every 2 weeks, and then you're spacing it out, and you'll get it, you know, fresh throughout the summer. This is just how we do it. It's what we figured out. I promise you, as you're drawing up your own plans, it's gonna take you a while. I think making those, even with my experience and, you know, other reading materials that I have, I think it took me like 2 hours to put that together. And that's just for me. I didn't do that for this video. This is just me doing my garden planning for the year and figuring out like what goes where. But I hope this was helpful for you. If you like, go ahead, like this video, check out our other videos. You can subscribe. If you want to find us on social media, we're on Instagram and TikTok, Cash App, and Venmo everything is the same tag, the Galaxy Gardens. If you want to send us tip money, great. If you don't, please just enjoy the videos. We'll have a new one out for you next week. I know this one was a little bit later than usual, but we'll see you there. And we have something coming up where we're finally kegging our West Coast IPA. It's just been chilling in our fermenter for a while, so we'll show you that too. I hope you have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you soon. Bye.